Hi, welcome back to the Cozy Reading Corner. Today I thought we would try out a new location, mostly because of my pink bedspread, so that we could talk about my favorite romance novels. Also, my romance shelf is completely disheveled because I took most of my romance books off of it. So this is just a better backdrop. Let me know if you like this backdrop. Alright, well, I do have many romance favorites, but today I'm going to break them down for you. I did a TikTok version of this. It was about 7 minutes long, but today what I'm going to do is take you through all my favorite romance authors, kind of their books that I would recommend that I have personally read, and then I'm going to show you all of the romance books that I own. So I'll give you a shelf tour of my romance book shelf, as well as go book by book through that shelf for you. So that will be at the end of the video. But to start us off, let's talk about one of my favorite romance authors in the entire world, and that is Miss Emily Henry. Of course, I had to choose her, and she is at the bottom of the pile, but Emily Henry is an incredible author. Her books are so much more than romance books, in my opinion. Her books are usually comprised of the main romance plot, and then usually some sort of like secondary, almost literary fiction plot. A lot of her books tend to read like a literary fiction novel as well, definitely like women's fiction. So she just really is an all-around really good author. So one of my favorite Emily Henry books ever is actually People We Meet on Vacation, and this tends to be people's least favorite, which I literally do not understand because I think it's so good. So this is the story between Alex and Poppy. And another thing to note about this book is that in Europe it's called You and Me on Vacation, and Australia and everything. But here in the States, it's called People We Meet on Vacation. So if you hear an alternative title and you get confused, that's kind of what it all is about. So this is about Alex and Poppy, and Poppy is a vacation travel influencer. And so over the years, as she's kind of building up her blog and vlog, I know how that feels. She invites Alex with her to go on these brand trips, and basically for a lot of them she does brand trips on a budget. And so one of the things I love about this book is it is a then and now timeline. So you see Alex and Poppy through each stage of their life as they're growing up, and then you also see them in present day. So you really get a good idea of kind of how they were as they were growing up and falling in love and that sort of thing. It's like a college sweethearts to lovers, romance, and everything like that. I swear, if you bark at more snowfall, you're canceled, Marley. You're only allowed to be up here if you decide not to bark at the snow that's falling. She has decided to bark at every single snowball that falls out of the bamboo in our backyard. But I digress. This is a really great story. Like I said, you really get to know the characters. You find out kind of what the incident is that caused Alex and Poppy to not go on trips anymore together, and their reconciliation and everything like that. So I really did love People We Meet on Vacation. I actually read this on a vacation. It was the perfect setting for it. So I highly recommend picking this up on your next vacation, regardless if it's a beach vacation or whatever it might be. My second favorite Emily Henry book is actually Happy Place by Emily Henry, and I read this for the first time last year. It's when it came out. This book is absolutely incredible. Both of these that I mentioned so far are 5-star rates for me. If you haven't read Happy Place, drop everything that you're doing and go and read it now. Honestly, People We Meet on Vacation and Happy Place might be tied as my favorite Emily Henry books if I'm really thinking about it. But this is so much more than a romance book. It's about Harriet and Wynne, and them and their group of friends typically went to this vacation home in Maine, I believe, every year for a vacation together. And so you see them kind of as they're growing up and going on these vacation outings together and living together in their New York City, I believe, or Boston apartment. And it kind of touches on themes of friendships and how friendships kind of develop and change over the years, as well as how relationships in general can develop and change as you go through different seasons of life. So this really touched me. It really made me appreciate the friendships and the relationships in my life. So I think it's really powerful whenever a book can make you do that. And then my two least favorite, but they're still really good books, Emily Henry books, are Beach Read and Book Lovers. So Book Lovers is a small town romance, so if you love small town romances, this is a good one for you. It's also between two bookish people, so that's another thing that I really enjoyed about this book. There's also a sister relationship in this book that's really explored, and I really did like that. That's why I said a lot of her books have some sort of overarching plot besides just the romance that kind of help you be invested in the story. And then there's also Beach Read by Emily Henry, and this kind of talks about dealing with grief, dealing with family issues, and different things like that as well. So yeah, overall these are really solid options. If you're looking for a romance read, definitely check out Emily Henry. She does have spice, but it's not too it's not anything too intense or anything like that. So it's definitely something to take a look at for sure. As soon as I quit recording, Marley started barking. So we love to see that. That being said, the next category of romance books that we will be talking about today collectively is summer romance books. So obviously Emily Henry plays into the whole summer romance feel, but these are some ones besides Emily Henry if you needed more options. Let's say you got through all of Emily Henry's books. My ultimate favorite top 10 books of all time is actually Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is one of my favorite romance books ever. I would say top 3 romance books. This is probably number, I don't know, I can't rank my top 3, but it is in the top 3. And that's Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is a childhood friends to lovers, and one thing that I learned about myself and my reading taste is I love then and now timelines. You'll hear that from me over and over again. And I also love childhood friends to lovers, or friends to lovers in general. So this book is just everything that I want. And another trope I love in books is bookish people. And both our main character Macy as well as our main character Elliot are bookish people. So Macy's father gets a lake house for him and Macy to kind of go up to on the weekends and during the summer. And while they go up to that lake house, Macy ends up developing a friendship over the years with Elliot, who lives next door full time. And so you just follow along with Macy and Elliot over the years of their friendship. And then one year their friendship ends abruptly, and you don't know why as you're going back and forth between the then and now timelines. You see them as adults and they haven't spoken for however many years, and you're wondering what could have happened to break up a relationship such as theirs. And so it's really unraveling that throughout the story, so that really kept me engaged in the story, and the love was just so pure and beautiful. There's nothing like a good friends to lovers. The reason that they broke up too was absolutely earth-shattering to me. Like, I bawled my eyes out. So definitely give Love in Other Words a try when it comes to a romance book. 2 other romance books that I really do enjoy that people are kind of up in the air about, so keep that in mind about this one, and I'll explain why, are Every Summer After by Carly Fortune and Meet Me at the Lake. Carly Fortune kind of has the whole lake house trope and vibes down. All of her books are set at a lake in Canada, so that's really fun to just to kind of return to that same like lake region with each one of her books. They aren't connected anyways, but all of her books kind of take place in that same region. So Every Summer After, once again, is childhood friends to lovers, then and now timeline. So I ate this up. There is the cheating trope in this, so do keep that in mind. Same thing with this one. There's like an emotional cheating going on with this book. This is about a couple, Fern and Will. I had to remember their names for a second. And Fern and Will meet in the city, and they decide to meet up at the lake however many years later. And Will never shows up, and then years later, once they're adults, they end up running into each other. So it's really, once again, a then and now timeline of their events back on that day at the lake and them returning to the lake years later. So yeah, these are really 2 great options if you wanted a fast-paced then and now timeline romance. However, like I said, keep in mind there is like borderline cheating trope in this one, and there is the full-on cheating trope in this book as well. Cheating tropes don't really bother me a whole lot in books. I can get past it if the romance is pure enough and if I'm rooting for the characters enough, and I found in this specific book I was still rooting for the characters to be together. So just keep that in mind. One author that I discovered this year that I felt completely head over heels in love with is Ashley Poston. And Ashley Poston does something really unique with her romance books that I think set her apart from the other authors that we talked about today. And there's a magical realism component to both of her books that she's written and released. So first and foremost, we have The Dead Romantics. I read this in the fall time. I would recommend that you read it in the fall time too. It's not necessarily spooky, but there are ghosts involved in this book. Our main character, Florence, which Florence is a great name, is a ghost writer for a famous author, and she is struggling to write her last book. And so she goes in and speaks with her publisher. She has a new contact at the publishing house, and he's giving her a hard time for getting that book in to her. Fast forward, something happens and she ends up having to return from New York City to her hometown in Texas, and she ends up going there and she ends up running into the ghost of that publisher. So it's really interesting. She's basically, one thing she can do is see ghosts and kind of help them get to the afterlife, and along the way she ends up developing a romance with this publisher. It sounds weird, ghost romance, but I promise it's so good and the ending is everything. So definitely take a look at The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. Her books feel like Emily Henry in the sense that there are really beautiful messages in them, and the writing and prose are absolutely gorgeous as well, and you just fall in love with the characters. There's also the story of Clementine, and Clementine inherits her apartment from her aunt. Her aunt passes away. Her and aunt were so close. They used to go on tons of different trips together, and so it's really a story about dealing with the grief and the loss of her aunt, but also this romance story that kind of develops from there. So Clementine inherits this apartment, and this apartment actually time travels 7 years in the past. So that's why it's called the 7-year slip. So the apartment will randomly slip 7 years into the past. And when Clementine moves into this apartment after her aunt's died, unbeknownst to her, her aunt actually sublet the apartment 7 years prior to our male main character. And so it's really Clementine developing this relationship with this male main character, even though he's stuck on the 7 years prior timeline and she's stuck in present day. So if you like the time traveling trope, which I loved the time traveler's life in high school, then you'll absolutely love this one as well. And I believe there's a Nicholas Sparks book that has time traveling component to it too. But yeah, this is a really great read. This is probably, this and Happy Place were my favorite romance reads of 2023. So I would highly recommend it for sure. And then last but not least, we have another one of my discoveries in 2023, and probably one of the #1 authors besides Emily Henry and Ashley Poston that I typically recommend on my live streams and on my TikTok, and that is Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is a great option if you do want a closed door romance. I often get asked what's a good closed door romance, and Ashley Poston's pretty closed door, but Sarah Adams is even more so for sure. But they're such beautiful and cute romances. First and foremost, we have The Cheat Sheet, which the second book, the rule book, is actually coming out this year, so it'd be a good time to pick it up. And The Cheat Sheet is between a ballerina and a football player in the NFL. And our ballerina and football player have been friends since high school, so it's a friends to lovers vibe. So it really just is a great book, just exploring that. It kind of gave me Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce vibe, so that's typically why I recommend it as well. We also do have the When in Rome series. So this series takes place in Rome, Kentucky, and our main character in the first book, Amelia, actually ends up breaking her car down in Noah's front yard, and that's how she ends up meeting Noah. So it kind of gives Hallmark vibes, except not as cheesy in my opinion. And then book 2 also takes place in Rome, and this is Noah's sister Annie and Amelia's bodyguard Will. So it really is a great romance between those two characters as well. And there are 2 more sisters in this family, in Will's family, so I would be interested to see if we do get 2 more books set in Rome, Kentucky. You don't have to read one before the other necessarily, but I do typically recommend reading When in Rome first, and then Practice Makes Perfect second to get the most out of these romance books. So now that we talked about my favorite authors, we talked about Sarah Adams and Ashley Poston and some summer romance books and Emily Henry. Oops. we lost people we meet on vacation, I'm gonna go ahead and give you a tour of all the romance books that I own and have chosen to keep. I have definitely unhauled some romance books over the years, so these will be just the ones that I've decided to keep and kind of my quick thoughts on each and every single one. But thanks for hanging out with me in the Cozy Reading Corner. I hope that you enjoy some of my romance book recs. Alright, well this is my romance shelf. Romance is one of my favorite genres, as I was saying. These are the romance books that I've actually read. I do have a pile of like TBR romance books too, but it's a lot less than my fantasy TBR. But once I actually finish the romance books, I'll put them on the shelf, kind of like trophies if you're new here. So all the ones that we'll talk about today in depth are ones that I've actually read. For context, down there is my physical TBR romance piles, those two piles right there. Okay, so here are all of my romance hardcovers. Starting from the bottom, I love Book of the Month because you can get romance hardcovers pretty affordably. There's now more and more like books that are getting released as hardcovers, but when I first started reading a couple years ago, that wasn't the case, and I definitely prefer hardcovers. So I got all three of Ali Hazelwood's books in hardcover. I have Love Theoretically, which is probably my favorite of these three, Love on the Brain, and The Love Hypothesis. I do have an affiliate code with Book of the Month if you want to try it out and you get your first book for $5. That's linked in my link tree. I also have It Ends With Us. This is also a Book of the Month copy. I read this on my Kindle originally for Kindle Unlimited. A Winter in New York. I read this past December. This was the book, one of the Book of Month picks, and this was such a fun romance, but it was so much more than a romance too. I do have Happy Place by Emily Henry. Sorry to hear my dog shaking. And this is a signed copy of Happy Place by Emily Henry. She is one of my favorite books. Just love everything about Harriet and Wynne. This is definitely worth the read for sure. I also have this Bridgerton exclusive edition. This is originally the Target edition of Bridgerton, which is really cool. They released this whenever the second season was coming out, but this is the second book in the Bridgerton series. This is the only physical copy of Bridgerton that I own. And then last but not least, I actually have a double of this one, but these are The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. One is the regular hardcover edition, which I love. I love the colors on this one. This is like a Groundhog's Day, Valentine's Day trope. And then I also do have the Barnes Noble exclusive, which has the sprayed edges. So I haven't been able to part with either one yet, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. Moving right along past my Pothos, I do have my romance paperbacks, which I have quite a few listed right here. First and foremost, I do have Colleen Hoover. So the reason why I have it organized like this is I have the authors listed here that I also have a hardcover for over here. So the first one, it would be Colleen Hoover. So for Coho, I have Heartbones, which is one of my favorites, November 9th. And It Starts With Us and Confess. Those are the ones I typically like. I didn't love It Starts With Us, if we're being honest. I just kept it because I have It Ends With Us, and I'm a completionist at heart. We also now have Ali Hazelwood. So I have two Ali Hazelwood books in paperback. I have Check and Mate as well as Loathe to Love You. Check and Mate is signed by Ali Hazelwood. This is her YA novel. And so I was able to get this specific copy signed. I really enjoyed this one. It was a really good YA. I also have Emily Henry's books in paperback too. So I have People We Meet on Vacation, which is my favorite Emily Henry, like we talked about, Book Lovers, Beach Read. So here we're kind of transitioning into summer romance books from here on. So Emily Henry is the queen of summer romance, and then I have Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren, which is a great childhood friends to lovers book. I should have talked about that at the beginning. There's also Carly Fortune's two summer books, which are Every Summer After and Meet Me at the Lake, and I believe there's a new one coming out this year. These are really great as well, and I really enjoyed them. I gobbled them up. They do have the cheating trope in them, so just keep that in mind. If you hate the cheating trope, you probably won't like them, but I thought they were really good. Once again, I love friends to lovers, then and now timelines, and they both had sprinklings of that in there. And then we have Tessa Bailey. Tessa Bailey, I've only ever liked one of her books, and that was It Happened One Summer. And this is an Alexis from Schitt's Creek, like fan fiction almost. So I really loved this one. I did not like the sequel, which is Hook, Line, and Sinker. However, once again, I'm a completionist, and since I have the first book, I wanted to keep the second book so that they are together. And then we have the Summer I Turned Pretty series, which I did like. I thought it was pretty good for a YA summer romance. And last but not least is Wildfire, which it was our January book club pick for my Discord, and that was a good time as well. I gave that one 4 stars. There's also Carly Fortune's 2 summer books, which are Every Summer After and Meet Me at the Lake, and I believe there's a new one coming out this year. These are really great as well, and I really enjoyed them. I gobbled them up. They do have the cheating trope in them, so just keep that in mind. If you hate the cheating trope, you probably won't like them, but I thought they were really good. Once again, I love friends to lovers, then and now timelines, and they both had sprinklings of that in there. And then we have Tessa Bailey. Tessa Bailey, I've only ever liked one of her books, and that was It Happened One Summer, and this is an Alexis from Schitt's Creek, like fan fiction almost. So I really loved this one. I did not like the sequel, which is Hook, Line, and Sinker. However, once again, I'm a completionist, and since I have the first book, I wanted to keep the second book so that they are together. And then we have the Summer I Turned Pretty series, which I did like. I thought it was pretty good for a YA summer romance. And last but not least is Wildfire, which it was our January book club pick for my Discord, and that was a good time as well. I gave that one 4 stars. Next thing we are on to is Elsie Silver. So these are the out of print covers. These are the indie printed discreet mirror covers, and I absolutely love these specific covers. You can get most of them still except for Flawless. You'll probably have to hunt this one down on like a resale website, but I think these specific covers are absolutely beautiful. This series has been one of my favorite like summer reads just in general. You don't necessarily need to read them in the summertime, but they definitely give me summer vibes. They take place in Chestnut Springs, and everybody is affiliated with each other through the ranch that they all work at or live at, which is really, really cool. So I really enjoyed my time in the Chestnut Springs world, and these are available on Kindle Unlimited. So these are a good Kindle Unlimited read if you wanted to try them out on there first. Okay, now we are on to one of my favorite authors, which is Sarah Adams. I discovered Sarah Adams this year and I fell in love with it. This is her small town romance series called When in Rome. This specific copy is signed by Sarah Adams, which I'm thankful to have a signed copy of her book. But this is a small town romance between Amelia, which is our pop star, and Noah, which is a baker. Basically, one thing leads to another. She goes to Rome, Kentucky to kind of get away, do kind of an Audrey Hepburn type thing and go to the nearest Rome. And she ends up crashing her car in Noah's front yard, and he kind of helps her out from there. So it's really cute. It gave me Hallmark vibes. For sure. Better than Hallmark though. And then the sequel is Practice Makes Perfect, and this is between Noah's sister Annie and Amelia's bodyguard Will. And I think this cover is super stunning as well. The cheat sheet is good as well, and the second book or companion book is coming out this year. This is also by Sarah Adams. This is between a ballerina player and a football player, or ballerina and a football player, so I thought this was good as well. I often get asked what are good, like, no spice, closed door romances, and I always recommend Sarah Adams for those. And then lastly, 2 of my favorite romance books from this year, which I should have talked about, is The 7-Year Slip and Dead Romantic, so I won't spend too much time on there. And then we have Lisa in Love, which is a New York City romance. I kind of grouped together the New York City books. So 7-Year Slip is New York City, Dead Romantics is New York City, Lisa in Love is New York City, Mistletoe Motive is New York City, and then this is my last Christmas book. This takes place in Canada though, so I just kind of put it next to my other Christmas book. So yeah, that is my romance shelf. And then the last thing I have here is a bookend to keep all my paperbacks upright, as well as all of my friendship bracelets from the Eras tour. I thought this was a fun way that was unique to me to go ahead and display them. This is a vintage like dish. And then I do have the Taylor Swift Golden book, just because it reminded me of Lover for sure. So yeah, that is my romance shelf. Let me know if you want a full-on dedicated bookshelf tour to my other genres of books, and I'd be happy to do that for you. And thank you so much for hanging out with me in the Cozy Reading Corner. Hope you enjoyed.